The other day about this absolute huge gaffe that was presented by the BBC presenter Laura Koonsberg, where she mistakenly sent over the briefing notes to the former British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Boris Johnson. And this was ahead of a prime-time TV sit-down interview. And it would have been a ratings buster for the BBC. You know, people do like to know the behind-the-scenes stuff. And Boris, as we now know, is getting ready to be unleashed, all thanks to his book, which is coming out in a few days' time. And he's doing all the rounds, let me tell you, and across the US networks. He's incredibly popular, in fact, in America. And, maybe I'm right, but this is, I could tell you the bookings that he's got on some of the major TV networks out there. They like his version of events. Maybe it's the accent, maybe it's the Englishness, who knows? But seemingly he translates very well. And the pre-sales of his book are going incredibly well out in the United States. Now, what's fascinating about this is this. You see, he was set down to do another big interview with another journalist, this time from the Comcast-owned Sky News. And this, well, went very badly wrong very quickly. Now, you see, the problem is, as I say, when you sit down with someone like that, you really do need to have done your groundwork, because really, this is the guy that's lived through it, whether it be him, Margaret Thatcher, Clement Attlee. They're the people behind the black door, and they are now giving you an insight into their version of events. And just to clear this up, by the way, a lot of people attacked Boris, saying that he revealed about Her Majesty the Queen's cancer, bone cancer. Actually, he didn't. The first person to do that was the royal windbag himself, Giles Brandreth. He actually detailed that in his book over 9 months ago now. I never understand the connection with Mr. Brandreth and the royals, because suddenly he's this confidant that goes on TV and reveals far more than anybody else. But there you go. Now, what's fascinating here is that Boris, as I say, was supposed to sit down with the Sky News journalist Beth Rigby. And apparently she put out a tweet saying, she couldn't sit down with him because she's now not allowed to either, subscribe it or indeed have it recorded. And again, this all looks a little bit flaky. And what's the true story behind the events? Well, Beth, you see, has a bit of form, because she and Boris were not the best of chums, and I can understand that. And apparently, according to that source, his team said, isn't there anybody better for Boris to sit down with? You have to remember that Beth Rigby, along with her co-pilots, as it were, on Sky News, Kay Burley and many more, well, they all broke the COVID rules, so much so that they were... Now, you have to remember, of course, that Beth Rigby and her co-hosts on Sky News, including Kay Burley, broke the COVID rules, and they were suspended from the channel for many months, up to 6 months. And I remember an interview where basically Beth Rigby was sitting down with the then Prime Minister Boris, and he basically, she was snapping at him, and he snapped back and said, well, what gives you the right to keep your job when you broke the rules? And I thought, finally, somebody having to go back at these mainstream media people. So the sort of idea that in fact she was removed simply because she wasn't allowed to record it doesn't necessarily hold muster. One might suggest, of course, that Boris, rightly so, is looking for people that understand the format of what he's talking about. And Beth clearly is no fan of Mr. Johnson. And I know there are many people that do not get on personally with Mr. Johnson. It's two sides. But this is the problem with the mainstream media. Once you align yourself to one side of the fence, and it's very clear, allegedly, that Beth Rigby, Sky News, they were delighted when the current government got in, the Labour Party. This, of course, is the party that snatched away all your rights and your winter fuel, but apparently they were delighted. So you can understand why Boris has decided to pull the plug on Beth. It makes you wonder, though, why the channel stuck with the people that broke the COVID rules in the first place. And that really, to me, is the bigger story. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.